What's happening, Pod Squad? Thank you for tuning in. You know what I didn't tell you, Doug?
No.
This is episode 100.
No way.
Wait, right? This is episode 100. Yeah, okay.
Lucky me.
What an honor. Yeah, there's going to be like confetti and balloons and stuff. No, this is so cool. Yeah, in the flesh with me today is Doug Bell. This is tremendous honor. I'm glad you're here. So, Doug, you, the list of stuff you've done is pretty impressive. What I most know you for is the establishment of it's still Canada's largest fruit wine.
Correct, yeah.
Fruit winery, yeah. Northern Lights Estate Winery. That was founded in 2013. You also do a lot in the restaurant business as well. Mm-hmm. I also know you because I found you once. Don't ask me how, but I found you once on Gary V's, what was that show called, 4DS?
Yeah, 4Ds.
4Ds.
4Ds, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like just random, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know who that guy is. It was like in the COVID years when it was all on Zoom. Yeah. So you are like an entrepreneur of entrepreneurs, man, second generation, and most importantly, a family guy too.
That's right, yeah. It's really important.
Thanks for coming in today.
Yeah,
this
thank
is awesome. And I appreciate you dealing with our delays. We had 2 delays to get you here.
Well, for episode 100 and for you, Cam, anything.
There we go. Episode 100. Then there's the balloons. Yeah, that's awesome. So, second generation entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What did your dad do? How did this all start?
Well, I'll bring you back to probably about, I'd say it's like 1992 or so. I remember waking up in my bed and all I heard was like banging going on in the outside of the house. It was like bang, bang, bang. And I remember, thinking, who the hell is making all that noise, right? I'm like trying to sleep in. It's a Saturday. I want to get up and watch some cartoons or, do something fun like we would do in the early 90s. And I walk outside and my dad basically throws a hammer at me and says, put that on and start working. We're tearing the side of the house off, and he wanted to put on some new siding. And he wasn't a guy to pay anyone to do the stuff that he thought he could do himself, right? So we would be tearing apart cars, trucks, renovating the house. I think I had to start mowing the lawn when I was probably about 5 or 6. So basically anything we could do, we did. And I remember asking him, why are you doing this? We'd been talking about potentially moving from our house. And what he said was, in our family, everything we touch, we try and make better for the person who's going to have it after us than before. And that scope has stayed with me for my entire life. Essentially, what we do is not just for ourselves. Of course, there's benefits to being a business owner and building something from scratch and having the ability to bring a new product, service, experience to people and improve their lives. And when you do that, you can showcase the things that you love and you can bring them to people in a new way and in a new light. And so I started by thinking about that. I spent my weekends in the shop. My dad started a logging business. So it was my responsibility to change all the light bulbs in the truck and wash it and fix the wiring. There's multiple times where my dad would come over and there'd be smoke billowing out of the cab of his truck as I'd inevitably crossed the wires wrong, and just started kind of building from there. When I was younger, I really liked the idea of, whether it's lemonade stands or trying to like build something, trying to earn my own money. I never got an allowance. I worked at Wendy's from the time that I was very young because, of course, my parents brought Wendy's to Prince George in 1988 and 1989. And through the years, I saw my dad primarily and my mom as well working in the business together and building everything from Avis car rentals, trucking companies, concession stands, logging, farming. I think I was 8 or 9 years old. I was cutting, raking, and baling hay on 100 acres in Reed Lake and Prince George. So those types of things really stuck with me. Then I was going through university, and the operating partner of our business left. My father was in politics at the time, so he had kind of stepped away. And I owned a part of the business, and so I went to him and our board, and I said, hey, listen, I think I can do this. I think I could actually build our business. And that had just kind of I'd put enough work into a business plan that for some reason they trusted this young kid coming out of university. I was still in university at the time. and I took over the company. And from there, we've been able to acquire new companies, build companies, and expand our existing companies to the tune that we now have 6 different operating entities in northern BC and continuing to grow. So it has been a fun ride, but the most important thing of this whole thing has been the fact that I think that we are making a difference in Prince George in particular, that we're reshaping the conversation of this beautiful city, and we're giving people pride in the city and what we do. And so that to me is improving the place that I love and I live, and hopefully for future generations, people are going to be very proud of it.
That gets me fired up, because that's very similar to what we try to do in my paving company, man. Like, yeah, we try to improve communities. So you took over. How old were you when you took this over?
I would have been probably 20 or 21 years old. And, at the time, I would never trust a 20 or 21-year-old to do something like that. So,
Sure.
I mean, I can only imagine the courage that it took for our partners to accept me to be able to do this. And I can't say that I did very well for the first couple of years. I mean, I would say our sales went up tremendously. I was able to renovate and acquire financing for our companies during a very difficult time during the 2008 debt crisis. I remember waking up on, I think it was December 20th, to an email, and I was waiting on financing to come through on a pre-negotiated agreement. This was in 2007. I had $357,000 worth of equipment, that invoices that were waiting to be paid, that were heading to Prince George as part of our renovation. And I got an email from our financing company saying, "Sorry, we've decided that we're not going to honor the contract." And I phoned them and I said to them, "How can you do this? This is like a legally binding contract." And they said, "Well, you can sue us and you'll probably win. But by the time you do that, you're not going to be able to complete your project anyways. And it makes more sense for us to do this than to honor your contract, because we might lose our AAA status rating if we don't, and we'll go out of business."
Dude, how old are you when that happened?
21 or 22, maybe something like that. And we went through that process. I was able to get financing from another institution. Actually, I ended up going to that institution, the original one, to get through that project at an obscenely high rate. And of course, as soon as I was able to, I moved away from them. They lost all of our business. They lost, hundreds of thousands of dollars of interest and millions of dollars of debt financing, both on that project and on future projects because of that. But I mean, I don't blame them for that. And I think that it was a great learning lesson, because I think anybody who gets into business has to realize life isn't fair, shit's going to happen, and only the hardy are actually going to make it through. And that's where the opportunity lies.
Yeah, but dude, 21. So I guess, wait, when you get started as young as you did, that's obviously got to be a huge part of it. I'm just, I'm probably projecting my own self at 21. Like, dude, there's no way. Like, come on. I didn't know anything about anything at 21. Man, that's wild. You attribute that all to your dad? Because you probably saw some pretty wild stuff. If you started a logging business, that's pretty cyclical, right? Up, down.
Well, I remember many times and all the stories coming through of the successes and the failures. And one thing that kind of stuck with me was that the bigger your business gets, the challenges don't really change. There's always something going on, something good, something bad. The only thing that changes is the number of zeros behind the numbers of ups and downs. And ultimately, our goal is just to make sure that we stay on the right side of that balance sheet and make sure that we're able to continue to perform so that we have opportunities going forward. But I think that also, as I grew up, I wasn't one to shy away from problems. And so when something happens, it's not a situation of giving up. It's about persevering. It's about finding a solution. There always is a solution to any problem that you're encountering. And in the moment, it is so hard, right? It's so frustrating because you're sitting there thinking like, there are lives depending on me. There are people, this is their job, their mortgages, all those things. So it can weigh very heavy on you. But if you take that and you flip it around and you say, I have the opportunity to impact and to provide future opportunities, future income, future houses for all of these people, and I can't blow that, then you're not nervous, you're excited. It's like an athlete who's getting ready for the big game. They're not going to tell you that they're nervous for the game. They're going to tell you they're excited. And just that small tweak in the mentality can actually really make it a lot easier to overcome those obstacles.
I mean, I agree 100%. But Doug, one of my favorite things to ask people is like, do you think that what you just described, do you think that's like hardwired in people, or is that the product of the environment growing up, or is it a mix of both? Because there's a lot of people in my industry who would like understandably, like when it gets difficult, they don't know what to do, right? Do you think it's like in people's DNA and their personality?
I think it's both, for sure. And I know, it seems subjective, but if you think about any individual growing up who has challenges, that means that they're overcoming obstacles from a very young age. And one of the things that my parents did very well with me is that they didn't give me very much, right? They would...
Other than a lot of work.
But they gave me the opportunities, right, to do things that other kids my age were not doing. Whether it's fixing vehicles or farming, right, whether it's working. And so because of that, I think, valued a dollar and valued the effort that came with the hard work over time. So that I think is probably the learned skill. However, I remember when I was younger, we were going to Disneyland, which is a lot of kids don't have the opportunity to go to Disneyland. But of course, my parents said, well, you need a pair of sunglasses, so you should probably take some of that money you've been saving. And I had, several $1,000s saved up, which at my age was probably a huge amount of money. And I said, oh, but those sunglasses are like $10. I think I can just squint for a week. And I was so cheap. And that was not learned. That was ingrained. That was like me just being a cheap asshole. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
Oh, do you, man. You do you.
But that was just me being cheap. And I'm sitting here thinking, did $10 really mean that much to me? No, it didn't. Also, I wonder why they didn't buy me a pair of sunglasses, because I'm sure they probably could have also afforded the $10. But, it gives you a little bit of insight into their mentality that, I had the ability to buy something. And so they weren't going to necessarily just hand it to me. I was going to actually have to go out and earn it.
Yeah. So how old are your kids now?
So my kids right now are 1.5 and 5. So
I thought they're
at
little.
a very interesting age, because I'm starting to see some of these similarities. And I think as a parent with young kids, one of the keys that I've just been interesting to watch over the last couple of years as they've developed is their personalities are at this age very much not necessarily learned. They are just the personalities. And so as my son, who's older, is getting a little bit older, you're starting to see a lot of that come through. But now there's more learned behaviors from the environment he's in. And so, whether it's just this vocabulary, the way he approaches problems, the way that, he's able to deal with stressful situations, you're starting to see some of these things come through. And, lucky for me, it's in a really positive way. But I don't think you can't change somebody's innate abilities, but you can only set them up and give them the right level of challenges so that they hopefully will be able to take the bulls by the horn when it's their time.
Well said. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Okay, I want to ask you about Northern Lights. Like, I take this for granted because, like, I was just telling you before we hit record, like, I've only been here for 5 years in Prince George. And as soon as I moved here, it was like, bang, like, you see this product everywhere, right? So it was founded in 2013. And I have noted, like, it's an award-winning product, what you guys do. Like, the largest fruit wine in the country, probably has led to you winning awards like Entrepreneur of the Year. So, like, why? I should know how this started, but I genuinely don't. And I'm curious, like, what makes someone go, you know what? I'm going to go start a fruit wine, which is like
who the hell
way
does
different.
That?
Yeah,
Why?
Grapes. Who needs
Why
grapes?
Why would you ever do that?
Yeah, how did this go? You probably told this before, but like I think people would be curious as to why.
So in 2007, I took over our group of companies, just for context, and I was operating them relatively successfully. We were seeing double-digit growth in sales, double-digit growth in net income. for the first kind of 4 years that I was operating. And so it was around 2010, 2011. I said, well, I'm not going to be just happy continuing to operate this, this small family business, which we had many other businesses over the years, but we had kind of, we had downsized them over the previous kind of 10, 15 years while my father was in politics. So I thought, what do I want to do? And, Wendy's was definitely up there because I love that brand. It's really a fun kind of piece to be a part of because I've got a lot of history with it, but also I think that it serves so many people that you can actually, you have a very strong opportunity to impact people positively, of course, negatively as well. So you have to really focus on operations and do everything you can to be successful there. But I thought there were some other opportunities and interests. And for me at the time, I was traveling for about a month every year to different areas of the world. And one thing that really struck me was every time I went somewhere, whether it be like Queenstown in New Zealand, right, or a place in Southeast Asia, or if you go over to Europe, there was all of these amazing cities, and a lot of them were quite small, but they were very notable, and there was a lot of city pride. And I started looking around and I said, what do these cities have? Because at the time, you may or may not know this when you weren't here, Prince George had a lot of negative talk internally. You would hear people say, oh, I'm from Prince George, right? They would whisper
talk down thing, yeah.
They would go to other cities and they wouldn't be like, hey, this is my city. It's beautiful. There's 2 amazing rivers. You can be anywhere within an hour out in an amazing place, hiking, skiing, fishing, hiking, snowmobiling, whatever that might be. And so I really thought there was an opportunity. And then also, I saw so much similarities in terms of like the mountain ranges, the beautiful atmosphere, the beautiful scenery, the hospitality, the people, and agritourism. And I thought that was really interesting in particular because in agritourism, it's something that I think binds the entire world. Everyone eats, right? And everyone has their own local flavor. And so when you go to different places, you're trying different cuisines, right? You're seeing what these people live like and what they're used to on a day-to-day basis. And it really was interesting that I didn't think that we had much of a agritourism piece in Prince George. Like, what does it mean for farming in northern British Columbia? What does that taste like? What are the smells? What are the sights? What do you interact with? And so agritourism was something that I was very passionate about and I thought could be really fun. At the same time, my dad was super into wine. So he was the Minister of Agriculture and Lands for a period of time.
Oh, no way. Well, there you go.
And so wines were under his portfolio. So he would travel around from winery to winery. And the thing he kept on telling me was, when I go there, it's not a competitive business in that everyone helps everyone out. So if you are to go into a winery and say, hey, I have this winery over here and we're having this problem, they would say, well, let me help you fix that problem. And it wasn't like the person might compete with me. They were actually seeing it as an opportunity. And so to build BC wines in general. And I thought that was really interesting because all the other businesses that I'd been a part of or I had seen, I'd been and done some mining stuff, I'd done some other retail, some other service-based businesses, and but nothing like that. Everybody was always like, oh, I'm not necessarily wishing my competitor the best down the road. Exactly. And so for me, that was really interesting. And I thought, agritourism, wine, why don't we bring those two things together and start a winery in Prince George? And thus started the journey, which ended up being Canada's largest winery, in which we are going to bottle our 1 millionth bottle here in 2025.
No way. That's wild. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. Because I'm guessing logistically, a fruit wine is not an easy thing to produce in an environment where it's, not always favorable for production.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. You seem like the guy is just eager to get into the challenge of it though.
Well, you got to roll up your sleeves. I mean, first thing is what the hell do I know about making wine too, right?
What did you know?
I know nothing. I mean, just be honest, right? So, I started out with the idea, other than a little bit of hay farming when I was younger, I was not the gardener in the backyard, right? I wasn't growing 18 different types of fruit. But we started down this journey of kind of figuring out what do we want to be? Who do we want to be? What do we want the product to look like? And we visited about 80 wineries throughout BC, Alberta, and into the US. And it was one of the very last wineries that we walked into, which strangely was the closest winery to us. It was located in Cache Creek, British Columbia, named Bonaparte Bend. And Bonaparte Bend Winery, which no longer exists, it was a fruit winery. And so we walked in, we almost walked out the door. But the owners who happened to be there said, no, you guys aren't allowed to leave until you try my wines. And our assumption was that fruit wines were going to be sweet, sugary, juicy, not real wine, as people would say with air quotes. And so we tried it and we said, holy shit, like this has the same body, acidity, tannin, and structure as grape wines. It just has an infinite number of new flavor profiles. This is a whole new way of doing wines, even though it's actually been around longer than grape wines, yet people weren't exploring it. The technology wasn't there. The people weren't really spending the time to make really high quality products. And we said, this makes so much sense. So you can grow grapes in Prince George. They're not always going to ripen, and you have more potential loss, like what happened in 2024 in January in the Okanagan, in Kelowna, where almost 95% of the grapes were killed off during a frost. Well, that could happen in Prince George much more frequently. So you might have some good years of harvest, and then you might lose your crops and spend another 5 years growing them back. And then we started looking at different fruits that we could grow up here. And of course, blueberries, apples, black currants, haskaps, saskatoons, strawberries, rhubarb, everything you can imagine, you can already grow up here. And we said, this is the direction we're going to go.
Man, very cool. So one of the things I appreciated it so much in, just even like you're quite involved with Gary Vaynerchuk. I know you've been to some of his events as well, right? That's a marketing guy.
Yeah.
So like, tell me about the marketing. I don't know if there's any correlation between marketing a winery with a pavement business, but I'm curious, what has been the approach to marketing specifically in that business? Because you guys have done a pretty good job.
Thank you. I mean, it's actually the exact same. It doesn't matter if you're selling hamburgers, if you're selling wine, if you're selling pavement. It's the absolute exact same thing. I mean, if you think about it, what do we all want, right? We all want customers. Well, how do you get customers? You need awareness, right? How do you need awareness? You need awareness with the right contextual audience, and you need to be able to send a message to them that they care about, that they consider similar, that you have the same values as them, that you can offer them something that they can't get anywhere else, and that they like you. People do business with people they like. And so you need to create a scenario where people know who you are, they like you, they feel comfortable with you. You're almost one of their friends. And then if you can accomplish that, then when they happen to need a product or service, who are they going to come to first? You.
Absolutely.
And so what I like about Gary Vee is that really he talks about kind of good guys winning, right? Finishing first. He talks about the realities of business, that it's hard, that you have to work hard, that you have to be at it for many years, that you may not see anything from all of your years of hard work, and you have to be kind of okay with that. And that if you do the right things for a long time, you will eventually be rewarded. And so if you think about your business rather than as an advertising platform or as a sales platform, but as a branding platform where you're creating essentially a vision in someone's mind of who you are. And if they correlate that with somebody they like, their friends, then they're going to start to generate positive feelings towards you. Now, you have to do all the things right. So you have to make sure that you're advertising to the right people that are actually going to see value in your product, right? So that actually would consider buying from you. You have to advertise to people who are in the right frame of mind. So like if you advertise positive things in a positive time of somebody's life, then they're going to probably grapple what you're trying to say a little bit better. If you are on LinkedIn, you're going to say something different than if you're on Instagram or on TikTok, right? The way that you send your message out has to be done in a way that you can reach people in a very short period of time, because our attention spans are so limited today. And you need to make sure that you're hitting the right reach as well. So I think a lot of us get stuck on one platform, whether it's a platform that worked for us for many years. We were talking about, whether it's radio or billboards or newspaper ads, right? They all work, but which one's going to work for the least amount of money? And how many times can you get in front of those people for the amount of dollars that you have? And so with the new platforms of today, you can't just be happy going on Facebook. You can't just be happy doing some other type of conventional. you need to do everything.
I imagine there's been, well, you've already kind of alluded to one challenge, a financial lender basically pulling the rug from you, and basically not even just pulling the rug, but like aggressively doing that. What have been some of the other like big challenges?
I mean, there's been so many, and there will continue to be some. I think that the biggest challenges outside of obviously, wanting to do the right thing for your people, wanting to be able to grow, provide people opportunities. I think that over time, what you'll find is that some challenges are your own fault, and you have to just kind of man up and say,
yeah,
like I made a mistake. And there's been so many product mistakes that I've made, people mistakes that I've made, marketing, mistakes that I've made. We've come out with products that we used to feel really strong about, and they were not necessarily profitable. So, you're essentially paying someone to drink your wine. That can be a real challenge. Over the course of the pandemic, we saw costs rise tremendously, and we couldn't keep up on pricing. So, as a point of interest, you might understand when I say that a shipping container of bottles from China that used to cost $2,000 over the pandemic cost $38,000. When you see your costs double on things like labels and corkscrews and stuff like that, then it can absolutely destroy your balance sheet in a very short period of time. And that can drive a lot of businesses underwater very quickly. And then how do you recover from that, right? There's only one thing that a business will ever do that puts them out of business, and that's run out of money. And so I think that as we grow and expand, we would spend way too much money on something that wasn't delivering the ROI. So we have made a tremendous amount of mistakes. I still make mistakes. And I actually think any mistake you make that doesn't put you underwater is likely going to benefit you in the long run as you just learn.
Yeah, totally. So you have like, man, I can feel the energy, right? You're a passionate guy. It's funny you said earlier, like marketing in a pavement in a wine business is not that different. Probably the same for people, right? I was just at a pavement show last week, and constant theme that came up is, man, people. Like where do we find these people? Next generation of workers, right? Yeah. So across your portfolio of companies, obviously people make up a huge component of that. By the way, it's really cool when I see content from Northern Lights and you see the people right on TikTok and YouTube. That's amazing. Yeah. Like what's I hate the term secret sauce, Doug, but like that's obviously an investment that starts at the top from trying to acquire not just talent, but actually provide an environment for them to thrive. How do you do that?
I would say that people are going to be the biggest challenge in any business, and it starts at the bottom and then it starts at the top. And what I mean by that is ultimately we have to serve the people who are working for us. And there are too many business owners, managers, and leaders in organizations that I see that are upset because, so-and-so didn't want to come in on the weekend to help support the business. So-and-so, is looking for a big raise, but we haven't hit that target yet. So-and-so is said that they wanted to take my job, but yet now they're asking for extra time off so that they can go on a family vacation. And the challenge is that finding great people is hard. Keeping great people is harder. And you are always going to be bound by your leadership's abilities. So if you have a really strong leadership team, you will inevitably have a great team below them. They're going to perform better, they're going to do more with less, and they're also going to stay longer. And so really starting with building your team from the top, ingraining the right cultural values so that they realize they're serving the people below them and you're serving them, and then ensuring that the culture is such that everybody wants to help each other. So you need from the top to lay out a vision that people can buy into, that they believe. And if you find that there's people within your organization that are not bought into that, then you have to either go back and say, is there something about what I'm saying that's just not, they're just not attributing to a benefit to them? Because remember, I could say, hey, I want to make $1 million next year. Why do you give a fuck? Right? Like, you don't care if I make $1 million next year. What I need to say is like, hey, what is it that you want? okay, you are a young dad, right? So you want to make sure that you're spending the most time with your kids humanly possible, but you don't necessarily want to lose your career trajectory, right? And you want to make enough money that you're comfortable, but you don't really care if you're making so much because you know that the other values are more important to you. Okay, how do I build that into you? What is it that you care about? And what goals can we set for the organization that are going to align around that? And if we can do that, well, then you're going to feel really good about coming here. You're probably going to perform at a much higher level, even with the reduced hours, and you're going to make everyone around you feel better. Vice versa, if you get into a situation where you get toxicity in the workplace, you need to move on. And that is really, I think sometimes that's the hardest thing, because you might have a very high performer that is not necessarily bought into the vision, but they might be able to do the work better than anybody else. And the longer you keep that person in the organization, the more toxic it will become, and your good people will end up leaving. And then you end up with the poor attitude, high performers. And usually that leads to poorer overall organizational performance.
Absolutely. So one of the things I found in our business, we're going to wrap this up pretty quick, but I want to press you on one more thing. One of the things I found in our business is, no matter where in the organization we've brought some people in, you could just tell they've never been in an environment before where like that thing that you just described exists. Like I'm thinking of one person in particular. I'm not going to go into the story, but like it's quite something when you provide or you attempt, because that's what we're doing. We're attempting to build that environment for people to succeed. And it's such a shock to them because they've never had it before. So tactically, like everything you said, I completely agree with, and I'm glad you said it all. Is there things that you're doing maybe at the leadership team level tactically, like how does this happen? Yeah. Because it's, we're saying this is what we want to do is great, but in my experience, if you just say it, you're going to get people who have never experienced that before. They've come from pretty rough and tumble environments before in their previous jobs, and they're like, that sounds great, but like I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah. So is there tactically things you do in your companies with your leadership team to build that out?
I mean, at first you have to demonstrate it. You got to walk the walk. And ultimately, there's a saying that Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's, had, which is do the right thing. And when I say do the right thing, most people start thinking and they're like, they already know what the right thing is. And so if they're asking somebody else, like, should I do this or should I do this? They already know that one of those things is the right thing and one of them isn't. And I think whether it's a small, medium, or large size organization, one challenge that most of us have today is that decisions make so long. Like when we're making a decision, we try and analyze it from this way, that way, the other way, when really you should just do one of them. Walk down the path, and if partway down the path you decide, oh, actually that probably wasn't the right decision, then go over here, right? But if we take so much time to make decisions in our organization, we don't necessarily get the ability to actually act. And an average plan that you just get going on today is going to perform way better than a great plan. And so, also never kind of being too hard on yourself when you do make a mistake, right? Just admitting mistakes. I think people who work for you will understand if you come to them and say, you know what, I made that decision. I fucked up. I'm sorry. But overall, this is where we're going to go now. And then people will get behind that. But you have to, from a standpoint of the organization, you can spend a lot of time. Like we have, a one-page strategic plan, and we have a mission statement, and you got your visions and your 20-mile march and your level 10 meetings and all that kind of stuff. My experience is that stuff is valuable to a point, but most of the time, people get so focused on the process that they forget why they're there. They're there to deliver the best quality experience for their customer and for their staff and for their shareholders that they possibly can.
Man, that's good. You got like a book or something to recommend on that subject? I'm reading Unreasonable Hospitality right now, but I'm just wondering if there's something else you'd recommend.
Well, I mean, one of my favorite books of all time is Setting the Table. And what you'll find is it's just about hospitality, and that just translates between all industries. And it's about collecting the dots to connect the dots. And the idea being that everybody has, whether it's an employee whether it's a management team member, whether it's a customer, whether it's a shareholder. Everyone has their own points of view on 1,000 different things. And you need to try and understand as many of those points as possible so that you can see how you can best serve them. And so in the restaurant industry, right, when you're starting a great restaurant, one of the things you want to do is you want to know what are those little things that can amplify someone's experience to a little degree. So if you happen to know there are two sets of customers that are coming in that are friends, but they didn't know that each other are coming in, and you can align the tables so that they can sit next to each other, you're creating a potential for serendipity in which they will have an improved experience because now they're there. If you see that there's a bachelorette party coming into a restaurant and you see that there's a 50th wedding anniversary, you try and separate them by as much as you humanly can. If you see that there's somebody who would love to meet somebody else and you just happen to be able to collect enough dots that you could see this person, can you set them up for the serendipity of meeting their idol, right? And what that's going to do to their experience. And so it goes all the way down the line in terms of looking at your staff, looking at your management team and saying, this is what's important to them. And so how do we create a new business, setting up our existing business so that they can, reach their goals? And I think that is part of it. But I mean, ultimately, it's a journey everyone has to learn on their own.
Fantastic. I wish we sometimes did this longer because I would talk with you for a lot longer. But Matt's going to make sure in the show notes we put everywhere where people can find you. Where do we find you? I know you're big on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Where else do people find you?
I mean, obviously, I try and share lots on our company's social media as well. So you're going to find me doing weird things on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. Obviously, my personal LinkedIn, Doug Bell, is a great place to link up with me. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me there, and I'd be happy to talk.
Amazing. One last quick question. Where's the future look like? Where are we going? What's next?
I think there's so many opportunities. I don't even want to say which particular one, but we're going to be looking at expanding our businesses through acquisition, new build, and growth in our existing companies. And my hope is that eventually Northern Lights Estate Winery is internationally recognized as the most amazing place, and it brings international recognition to Prince George for being an amazing place to go visit and get great hospitality.
I'll be watching, man. I'll be watching. Thank you for coming. This has been great.
It was wonderful. Thank you.